be able to basically take care of their own families. And many times you have families and single mothers and sometimes even single fathers working 2 and 3 jobs trying to make ends meet. And so we finally fought enough and got enough petitions signed where now the voters can make a choice that we think that $15 an hour will be sufficient. However, Florida is a very expensive state to live in, especially South Florida. And it'll take a couple of more $15 an hour to be added to this $15 an hour just for us to live in a comfortable state. Now, the downside of this amendment is that if it should pass, it doesn't mean that it will automatically go into play of it's instantly $15 an hour. It's going to actually take 5 years because the language says that they will add $1 a year every September 30th for the next 5 years, and then it would eventually become $15 an hour. That's a start, but yet it's still some years away for it actually becoming a part of being a minimum wage. So that's why we're pushing it, because we see the domino effect of what a family go through when they don't make enough money to make ends meet. And there is a domino effect. It affects health because most of these jobs that pay minimum wage often do not offer benefits such as health care. Then you have families, single family homes, where they're working 2 and 3 jobs, which then takes them away from the home, and the kids are there by themselves. And often when children are left by themselves, they find little things to get into that will often get them into trouble. If a parent was making a decent amount of money where they don't have to work 2 and 3 jobs, they can be home more because they're so focused on making ends meet, a roof over their head, trying to keep food on the table. That'll give them more time at home where they can literally be home with their own children. Um, there was a gentleman in Tampa, I think it was Tampa, I know it's in that I-4 corridor, who actually sponsored this financially. And I can't think of his name. I do apologize, but if it comes back to me, I would definitely bring it up. He sponsored the financial part of making this amendment become reality, where we can actually, the voters can make the decision. Amendment 3 and 4, and I want to combine those because those two amendments is designed to destroy democracy. Amendment 3 is paid for by a millionaire by the name of Michael Fernandez, who actually came up with the money. And Amendment 3 is to reduce minority representation in the electoral process, taking away the power of Black voters. And this is done in such a way, and it's very strategic, and I want to use an example that we probably can understand, where, when you get your ballot, if you're a Democrat, you see all the Democrat candidates. And if you're Republican or independent, you see those candidates on your ballot. And then you vote. And then those two winners you will see both of them in a runoff. And in that runoff, you will see where there's two candidates, a Democrat or Republican, who voters have to make a decision by voting and who will become that winner. This right here will eliminate that. And they're looking at whoever gets the most votes. So it could be two Republicans that gets the most vote that would then knock out an entire party, and it also will affect the Black voters. And just to give an example, Miami-Dade County is considered a red county. Broward County is a blue county. So in Miami-Dade, it's more Republicans that vote. And so that gives a different type of opportunity if if Black folks and if you're another party don't get out to vote, in that runoff, it would be 2 Republicans. And so that's another form of destroying democracy. Amendment 4 is the same. And it's to make it harder for the people to pass laws they care about by reducing the power and the respect of the voter. And that's what I basically said, how it becomes an amendment. And I used in 2018, Amendment 4, where we was asking so many people, vote yes on 4. That way, over 1.2 million returning citizens will have the opportunity to get their voting rights restored. And we won. And it took a lot of work to get that done. What they're saying in Amendment 4 is let's take that away. And who is sponsoring this amendment is big corporations. Corporations that get our money. For example, Florida Power and Light is helping sponsor this amendment. Publix, and many times, many of us shop at Publix because somewhere we feel like Publix fruit is the best. Nobody's strawberries or grapes taste better than Publix. But when they get our money, they turn it around. They turn around and come up with pushing amendments such as this, so they could push amendments that with our money, they use it to hurt our communities and people who look like us. And it's really unfortunate. And I always say and I always share, when you begin to follow the money, you'll be surprised how political connected it is and how it works against communities of color. Amendment 5 and 6 has a lot to do with tax breaks, and it has a lot to do also with how much money one can make, but it is still a tax break. Me personally, I'm very neutral about it, because Amendment 5, it increases the tax breaks for new home buyers. And if you're a new home buyer, you should see a tax break, but it definitely benefits the millionaire. And Amendment 6 increases the tax break for spouses of veterans. And if you're a veteran, we know that many spouses was not looked at the same. And this gives opportunity for those spouses to get a tax break or some form of benefits if their spouse was a veteran, that both, whether you're the male or female, there are some benefits there that where you can be included. One of the way we look at 3 and 4, they're the most dangerous. Number 4 is one that really stands out because we pushed in 2018, vote yes on 4, vote yes on 4. We celebrated the victory knowing that 1.2 million, over 1.2 million returning citizens can get their voting rights restored. But at the same time, we see they came back with something else to go against it, where you have to pay fines and fees off. But the momentum of Amendment 4 and voting yes still sits in the spirit of so many voters, where they will say, maybe we need to vote yes again on this same one, and it means the total opposite. I want to pause for a moment, just so if there's any questions around these amendments, and if I can help you, and like I say, some of you have probably already voted, and I pray that you voted in a way that you, your family, and community can benefit from. But what I really wanted to for you all to really understand is who is behind a lot of these amendments and how it get passed and how money is being used to push these amendments that often hurt Black and brown folks, especially Black folks. So I want to pause if there's any questions about.
Good evening, Sister Rhonda.
This is Hi, how are you?
Hi. God bless you. Good to see you. There are some questions in the chat. I don't know, Sister Melinda, are you monitoring the chat? Because someone just asked a question, and
I can. Reverend Parrott.
Okay, would you please?
Reverend Parrott. I'm going to read it.
Okay,
Will you ask her please to give us the yes or no answer for each amendment?
Okay. Let me respond this way.
yes, and I would like to say this is her
Yeah, this is me.
personal opinion. Yes,
Exactly. I
it does
cannot
not
tell.
reflect.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly. I cannot tell anyone how they should vote other than my husband and kids. And sometimes we even get in our own debates. But this is the way I voted. I voted yes on 2, and I voted no on everything else. This is what I did.
everything.
Everything else, I said no because of there's always a hidden agenda. And I looked at it that way on who sponsored the amendment. And so when I say that, who actually put the money into it? And so, I mean, I was disappointed, don't get me wrong, with some who actually put money into these amendments. I did that. Number one, um, with our organization, we fight for Black and brown folks, which will include the immigrant community. So many times we think that the immigrants are a threat to Black folks, and they're not. We just don't realize how much we have in common, especially when it comes to the criminal justice system. We have more in common than what actually separates us. And so 5 and 6, I'm really neutral about, because if you're a veteran, I think you should vote. I think that's important. Um, if you're a veteran, you're talking about a spouse getting benefits. I think it's extremely important. So even if you're a new home, get ready to purchase a home, who doesn't want a tax cut? But the tax cuts definitely looks different for rich people than it does people who, I guess we're still the middle class. I can't tell anymore. It does look different because some days I think I'm a little lower than the middle class, depending on what day it is. And so, but it all depends. So I'm very firm on 3 and 4, because anything that's going to destroy democracy affects me personally. Anything that's any kind of threat to democracy, something's wrong with that picture. So that's the way I voted. But I do believe when it comes to 5 and 6, you really need to look at your own situation and what you see. And if you're a veteran alone, that says volumes when it comes to benefits. But there's always a hidden agenda. And so I spent a lot of time in Tallahassee fighting these hidden agendas. And so that's the way so you
Next
all
question.
take it to the Lord in prayer and ask.
All right, so there were 6 amendments. You voted no to yes to number 2 and no to all of the others. Next question. It's Reverend Barr says he has a question.
Yes, good evening, President Davis, Pastor Perry, of course, to our Northern Fellowship, Sister Collins. Sister Thomas, I'm glad you made clarity of the veterans as a retired military, and that is U.S. Army. There's some other things out there, but U.S. Army, of course. I'm glad you made an amendment, understand to that, because I also, as a retiree, am aware that the benefit factor for spouses and for sponsors, there is a cut in other funds. And I ask that we be careful, even though I'm a retired and yes, I would benefit from it. We do know that we are in 6 campaigns. America is in 6 campaigns. Don't forget the Korean War is still on it at a ceasefire. So in these 6 campaigns, we want to make sure we do not defund our soldiers who are in active campaign to put these funds somewhere else. And as Sister Thomas said, these follow the trace of the money when they fund these things into these other houses, stuff like that. There are companies and corporations that are funding politicians to push this bill, and most of them are developers. So please be careful in how we defund in certain plans. Thank you, Ms. Thomas, for reminding us to make sure we get history on reading this, because like I said, and I'm going to say this, I didn't vote for it simply because even as a retired soldier, I would have benefited from it. It would have hurt thousands of soldiers who are actively employed at this time, especially with the first home ownership. Thank you so much.
Great. He helped put the icing on the cake, and I appreciate that. And so we have to be so careful. This is why these amendments, just always remember, it's always strategic. They once said that because of, they knew that these funders who really supports these amendments, they once said, well, if you didn't live in the state of Florida, it won't be considered proper funding if you live out of the state of Florida. And so then they came back and that wasn't working. And then they came back and they came up with Amendment 4. Well, why don't we just get rid of it? And so if they're not doing what's right legislatively, and then they get rid of it, that leaves us in a spot where we would never be able to allow the voters to make a choice, or to let the voters make the decision on what the voters care about. And so that's why we have to be very, very careful with any of these amendments. So if there's no other questions, I'll move forward. And I wanted to just share something that is very, very crucial, that I think that this message is not getting out fast enough in what post-election can possibly look like. So let me just start at the beginning with Miami-Dade County and Broward County has been declared ground zero for voter suppression. And Palm Beach is very close. In 2019, I toured the state of Florida, trying to get in as many Black churches as I possibly can, and some Puerto Rican churches, as many HBCUs, to any community center, anyone that will let me in. I tried very hard to cover the state, and I was collecting stories. Congresswoman Marcia Fudge she was fighting really hard because, as you all know, our voting rights is not protected. And so she was fighting very hard to bring that back, where our voting rights will be protected in the midst of this 2020 election. Unfortunately, that wasn't done quick enough. So I traveled the state collecting stories on different voters' voting experience. And in those stories, what we realize is that Black folks in particular cannot really identify what real voter suppression looks like, because we have gotten so accustomed, and now we think it's a norm when it's really voter suppression. I'll give an example. If in every area in this state does not have long lines where you're in a voting line 2 and 3 hours. Many times we're in the line very long because they have given certain zip codes the worst machines they have, or they have not put enough staff in these voting sites, precincts, to accommodate certain communities. And so our lines are extremely long, and that's strategic. What's also strategic is when you have been purged from the system and you were never notified that you were purged. strategic. I have gotten in many fights with Rick Scott and Pam Bundy about this kind of drama. When they see me coming, they already start shaking their hands, and that woman from Miami don't have enough to do in Miami. I loved irritating them to do what was right. When we question why was these people who have been purged from the system not notified, the answer was we downsized that department. So voters was not notified whether they were purged or restored. And that was strategic. And so another thing is this thing with your signature. Oh, the signatures don't match. Well, things happen as we get older. We no longer feel like writing our whole name out. And if we look at young people, some of them were never taught to write in cursive anyway for it to be a signature. Also, what was is that our students that was in HBCUs, they asked me, they go, Pastor, we need you to go to Florida State. And I said, oh, the devil is a lie. There's no way you're going to get me to go to Florida State unless we're watching a game, and I'll be sitting on the U side even at the game. And so I say, but where I will go is across the track at Florida A&M University. And then we found out that our kids at Florida A&M, Bethune-Cookman, Florida Memorial, because they go away to school and they got a different address than the dorm, that they were being given a hard time in voting. And so we collected all these stories, and I had a ball collecting them and sending them to DC. And what we assessed was Dade and Broward County being ground zero. I do want to give Miami-Dade County a compliment, because in August during the primary, we only had 10 dead people to vote. Normally we have at least 300 dead people in Dade County alone. So we have maneuvered that down to 10. And we thought only Jesus resurrected. Well, during election season, not Jesus, Lazarus. During election season, it's a lot of people in Hialeah. They resurrect just to vote. And so Broward County is one of the largest Democratic counties in the state. And Broward County is always a target. It's a target right now as we speak. One of the difference with Dade is that, first of all, Dade politics is very different than anybody else in the state. Dade is the one that the supervisor of the supervisor election office, that is not a electoral seat. That's somebody that filled out an application and got the job. When you go into other counties, you have to vote for the supervisor of election. Dade is different. That's why they got a different kind of drama. My organization, we have sued 10 supervisor of election officers in the state because of voter suppression. And so now we're trying to hold them accountable. Also with these drop boxes, they play games where they don't want to put the drop boxes in a convenient place. Or they hide the boxes and you won't even know that the boxes exist. Just in Miami-Dade at North Dade Library, the first day of early voting, at 6:45 a.m., we had about 60 senior citizens stood in the rain. It was pouring down rain, and they did not make it convenient to get these elderly people out of the rain to sit until the rain passed over. And we asked them across the state, will you make any kind of accessibility for the elderly? And we were told no. All of that is voter suppression. In 2018, when we had to go through this count every vote, and they had to go back and recount, and they attacked Brenda Snipes in Broward County. That was intentional. Brenda Snipes had asked for help way before we even got to a Souls to the Polls, because she already knew she didn't have the capacity, and Tallahassee refused to send her help. That's the second Black woman in Broward County that they've made it hard for. And now they got this special maid, this is me speaking now, this special maid, the truth not in him liar, that's sitting there, that was appointed by the present governor. I don't think the truth is in him, period. And so we have to be special. We have to be focused on making sure that we don't just vote, but our vote is actually counted and protected. We have some people that voted in August. They purged them right after the primary. And how did they know? Is that when they got their ballot and they were getting ready to, they had a question, and they were told by the supervisor of election office, you've been purged. What they agreed, that if you have not voted in the past 2 elections, there's a good possibility that you're purged and you were never notified. So we have in 2018, just to give an example, and I'm going to take this further where you can understand more, when we was demanding that they count every vote, because we knew that Andrew Gillum had conceded, and we wanted to make sure him, and I think it was the Senator Bill Nelson, that every vote was counted. We had this large gathering at Pastor Davidson's church, Mount Olive in Broward County, and you will be surprised what happened. I think that church seated, 5,000. We were packed, people were outside, and there was a group of people that came, and they were calling, it was the racial slurs. They had surrounded the church, and what we did, because nobody else can get inside, we brought speakers outside because people couldn't get inside to hear, and we brought the speakers outside and put on gospel music to drown them out of all of the racial slurs right there in Fort Lauderdale. And so this just helps me to take it to what post-election is looking like now. This is what we are now trying to educate as many people as possible of what the new 2020 post-election it can possibly look like. I'm on national calls. I'm on calls with law enforcement. I've had trainings with the FBI. I'm on the calls with Homeland Security, local police officers, because the plan now looks like, do you have a weapon with a permit?
Wow.
Number 2, prepare to stock up food for 3 or 4 days. Prepare to remain in your homes at least 3 or 4 days. Are you familiar with de-escalation? How to avoid conflict? Protect your family at any means necessary. Because that's how real these hate groups are. If the current person who resides in the office in DC on Black Lives Matter Boulevard or Avenue, if he should lose, these hate groups are rising up in a bold way. So my job and my staff, we've been talking to gang members. We've been talking to law enforcement on every level. I'm almost to the point of, and I was concerned with law enforcement because you're talking about hate groups coming into Black communities, starting friction that will remind us of what took place in the 50s and the 60s. And what the hate groups did not get, they didn't get the memo that there's a generation that's not going to stay in the house. And whatever you bring, you better bring it. That's why I say I'm talking to gangs. And I asked Homeland Security, what I don't want is for law enforcement to arrest more Black folks, knowing that they were in their own community and someone came in, but yet all Black folks was arrested. We don't want that. But do I need to talk to the funeral home owners as well and directors, because we may have more body bags, because there's a generation who is not going to put up with this foolishness.
So, Dr. Thomas,
Yes.
is this in anticipation of a Trump loss, this scenario? that
Yes,
you're
it
painting?
is.
Okay.
And they're very boastful with it. Now, the Proud Boys just did a rally on was it early day voting at University of Central Florida. The leader of the Proud Boys live in Miami. He lives in South Florida. And so he was just I had a call with moderator in Pensacola.
Williams.
Yes, because I'm doing he did a Souls to the Polls for me. And we know, if anybody saw the debate when Trump was questioned about the Proud Boys, he didn't know who they were, but yet they were his escorts in Pensacola last week.
You know, I've got a question, and not to minimize the point you're on, but you were talking about Broward and Dade being targeted. This question seems offbeat, but it comes back. My wife showed me something, Sister Thomas, the makeup of the Florida votes, Pensacola, Broward and Dade is critical if you are pro-Biden, just to be specific in this election. And then it's somewhat surprising, Palm Beach County is a toss-up. And then you go to Orlando, that I-4 corridor, there's a toss-up. Mm-hmm. And after that, if Democrats don't vote, or Blacks, or however you want to make up, they don't vote in large numbers, Florida is not a possibility. My question is the electoral vote in Florida. Can you expound on that, because I'm ignorant to that concept and how critical Broward and Dade. So there's a reason why Broward and Dade are targeted. Can you allude to that and educate me and perhaps others on the Florida electoral vote?
The electoral part, that electoral vote, I still can't get the full understanding myself, and I'm gonna be really, really honest with you. One of the reasons Broward is a target is because it's a blue county.
Right.
Dade is a target because of all of the manipulation and bad politics. A lot of Dade politics reflects Trump. It reflects it. And if you live in Dade County now, if you look at who's running for Senate and the Miami-Dade County mayor and all, it reflects the behavior and the character of Trump. And so it's a toss-up. It's a toss-up in Dade in a way of, it's just bad politics that has taken over Miami-Dade County. To be honest, Black folks have really lost its power because Cubans is the new white. They don't consider themselves as brown. They think they're part of making America great again. And that's with Dade County. Broward, Palm Beach is still a toss-up. One of the things that makes Palm Beach a concern for us is that the supervisor of election for Palm Beach that supervisor was appointed by DeSantis.
Yeah.
So that's what it was like. That's why we have to keep our eyes on Palm Beach. Broward is predominantly ran by Democrats. And right now, Broward is in a season where Black men are leading in roles, if they should win, in roles like never before. So that's another problem there for some, because number one, you're talking about a Black man in leadership and power, especially when you're talking about the sheriff and the state attorney. That's power. Which way will they go? You know, and so, and then you're a Democrat. And so that's that. Also, when you get into some of these smaller areas, I had a call with all of the moderators that Pastor Carl Johnson led. When you get into going into that North Florida area, there's a different kind of fear in voting than what we have here. It's not so much that the vote is being suppressed, but I don't know if you all know it, but it's been more guns sold in the past year than ever before, and it's very hard to find ammunition. And in North Florida, when I was on the phone call, because I wanted them to have a Souls to the Polls like in Jasper and Madison, and they wrestled with that because of the post-election part. And they were very open and honest about it because of that post-election part, and knowing, and the fact that they were able to say, if you wanted to buy ammunition, it's none. And so that wasn't a worry, because we know in Dade we could buy ammunition off the ice cream truck or the corner store. That was not a problem for us in certain areas, but also we wouldn't be targeted in the same way as some of these smaller towns. They embraced the opportunity, but there still was a fear there. And so I know I didn't answer your question as far as the electoral part, because I still don't understand it all myself. It may be somebody on the call that understands it, because I can't tell what works and what doesn't work anymore. When we look at the appointing of the Supreme Court judge, when Obama was, had the opportunity to appoint, he was denied that, and because of an election, and it's the opposite now. So I can't tell, because right now, the way we're living, what's wrong look right and what's right look wrong. And it's just so unfortunate. But I do think that I wouldn't take anything for granted with post-election, because they're very, very open. I was just today on 95, and I see all the Trump supporters. They're very, very open. They're riding. They got the flags everywhere. And I said, oh, they're getting closer and closer to Miami Gardens. I said, and that's an area that you need to really know what kind of flag you have. When you start, you want to make sure your flag lines up with who lives in Miami Gardens. But unfortunately, he has released this spirit of where they're very bold in how that spirit of hatred.
And Sister Rhonda, let me just jump in right there. You made mention of the fact that the gun buying went out the roof back before, right after the pandemic hit, and we were quarantined and asked to stay in our homes. They said when folk were able to go out, they cleared the shelves of guns, and all of this, and people would then realize it, all of this was in preparation to what Trump had put in the hearts of many, and in a very quiet way, encouraged folk and empowered folk. That's the word I'm going to look. Yes. Empowered folk to think that that if things don't go the way he supposed they should go, we're gonna have problems on our hand, and a lot of us are sleeping on that. Yes. A lot of us are sleeping on that. We need to just not. I'm not telling us to be go out and buy guns. I'm simply saying to us that we need to use the power of vote. It needs to be a overwhelming amount of voters that go out, make their voices heard, and make sure that I was riding through Port St. Lucie about a month ago, and all up in there, you saw the signs. I mean, very wide open. I see Sister Scott, who hangs out in Central Florida quite often, put in the chat that Trump has signs all over the place. So he's kind of empowered people, and we need to be careful of that. I don't know if you want to mention this or not, but the black votes in the Dade County area, and as much as there are lines in most of our early voting sites, and much as there are lines, these numbers in our community are still low.
Yes. I was on calls all day today. Black votes in Miami-Dade in particular is extremely low. It's more black men voting for Trump because they're looking at it as this is their opportunity to make money. What they fail to see is what we may call making money is nothing compared to what Trump and his supporters. It's no comparison in that making of money. The millions they make, and we're getting excited over a few hundred or a few thousand. And it's just really unfortunate. We've been doing phone banking, and to find that it's so many black men that are saying that they're going to vote for Trump is very discouraging, especially when Trump does not really hide the way he feels about black men. And we see that in the midst of protesting and his responses. And so that's disappointing. And also I'm over 25 counties in the state of Florida and 90 events pushing souls to the polls. And I had to speak with law enforcement, and they were telling me that law enforcement cannot come on the site of any precinct because that's voter intimidation, and they specialized it in Ferguson. That's voter intimidation, and if the only way any form of law enforcement, security guard, any come on a precinct is because they were called because of a situation that occurred. So they're looking from a distance in the way of what's going on. Unfortunately, I had just had a meeting with some chief of police, and 2 weeks later, here comes a white cop, go to a precinct with a Trump mask on. Police can't even vote with their uniform on. And that was part of the intimidation part. And so, I was really, really annoyed because I had just had a meeting with you all, and obviously you didn't share the meeting with your staff because this clown, he just went out there like this is what he's supposed to do. And so these are the things that we need to be mindful of. We need to be mindful of our surroundings. They was just showing on MSNBC, and this is the way I saw it, and I'm using I as me, Rhonda, on the plan when they were wanting, when the attempt to kidnap the governor of Michigan. And they was not just planning to kidnap her, but their plan was to murder her. And they were showing all of what the plans were of those 13 men. And I was like, well, if they was going to do that to this white woman, what plan do they have for us? And so I started having meetings with law enforcement from the time of the shooting that took place in South Carolina. And that's when in Miami-Dade, law enforcement encouraged clergy to allow guns to come into our place of worship and have a plan of a security plan. And then secondly is what took place in Charlottesville. And so what caught my attention was The young people went on social media and they were so polite and intelligent, and they extended an invitation to all of these hate groups. And they called them out: white supremacists, Nazis, Klan. We invite you to hold your next rally in our neighborhood. And they start calling out the neighborhoods. Come into Liberty City, come into Miami Gardens, come over town. And then it went broad because social media is very interesting. Then they start saying, come into Baltimore, come into the Bronx. And at the end, they close out, they say, we will give you, we will treat you with hospitality, and we welcome you into our neighborhood to have your next rally. And they closed it out: I am not my grandmother. And I then said, oh, it's time for us to start talking. And I mean real talk. And so I had clergy and law enforcement in a room, because that was the next, I'm sorry, those were two things. How do we protect the Black church, and how do we protect Black businesses? That's part of the post-election, because we know that the Black church, where we used to be a threat, now we play games and we're no longer looked at as a threat, because we know that so many our civil rights leaders, and during that era, they depended on the Black church, and now they look at us as we'll sell out. All you got to do is offer us a few dollars. And unfortunately, I got this from a white man, a politician, who told me, Pastor Rhonda, well, we know if we give Black clergy a few dollars, they're going to sway with whoever. I was so embarrassed. And I'm like, well, not all of us. I mean, it might be a few, but not all of us. And so I know I only have one more minute, Pastor. You see, this time went really fast. But I just really, really wanted to bring this information to you all, whether it's around the amendments or whether it's around the voter suppression. How do we protect our vote? Please encourage, we got to. It's a lot at stake on the outcome of this election. And then by all means, prepare your own self in the way God leads you to protect your family, just in case these little hate groups get beyond and get ridiculous. Because I know Trump has said he will have his own people at the polls monitoring the voting process. And when he said that, that meant these groups with guns. And if you all are from, I don't know what community you may vote in or where you may live, but I can name some that if my people look and see it's okay for you to bring your gun, they're gonna bring their gun too. And there we are, a lot of innocent people, lives at stake. But there have been a few sheriffs and chiefs of police who are monitoring polls, who are saying that they will not allow it. And when I say that, that includes Homeland Security and the FBI. So I don't know if we feel protected that way. Honestly, I don't, but it is what it is.
I want to click quickly. I came in when you were talking about the Electoral College and how it works. I was looking for Valerie Brandt Wilson. She wasn't there, so I went to the next best person, which is my girlfriend, Beatrice Lewis Saint. And Beatrice gave me the quick lowdown, and this is how we'll understand it. Each Republicans and Democrats have a college. When the person in the state, so if Biden wins Florida, our college casts the votes for him. And she said the simplest way to remember this and make it make sense to you is Hillary Clinton won the popular vote and didn't win the Electoral College votes because Democrats in those states that she won voted against her in the college. So if you don't carry your college, you can win the popular vote and not win the election. And that's when they cast those Electoral College votes. That's how the president is really decided, regardless of how many people vote for them, him or her. That's it.
That's, it's funny you said that, because I have been getting emails saying, how do we get rid of that system of the college votes? and allow the popular votes to stand and make, because you know they're not you all know that they're not expecting a winner to be announced for weeks, but they do know that if they do not have a winner by January 20th, Nancy Pelosi becomes the president, and I know then they're going to pass out and go into a cardiac arrest if that should happen. But one of the reasons why we say we have to protect the vote is that we don't want them rushing and not counting every vote to come up with a winner, and we miss that opportunity of that outcome. Pastor, it's 6:48. I know I went over, but I do appreciate the fact that you all extended the invitation, and I hope that I gave you all some helpful information that you could use it. But whatever you do is don't hold it, keep it to yourself. If
Yeah.
you don't share it, if you don't encourage no one else to get out to vote, the next 4 years of our life, if you don't know Jesus, it'll be a good time to get to know him.
That's absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct. Your sister, President Gloria Jackson Davis, you should have seen some of her expressions when some of the comments you were made. They were priceless. I think you impacted us very much. So I'm going to leave time now. We have a service that's going to start shortly. However, I do want, if there's an opportunity or is there a question or comment that somebody may want to ask of Sister Rhonda before we dismiss, I want to give an opportunity for her to answer that question if she can. Anybody?
Hi, yes, Sister Brown here. I have a question. Where do you start with the research to, find out what companies are behind the funding?
Pastor Parrott,
Yes.
Sister Dolores Brown, this is her first time, so she doesn't know the protocol. Will you share with her that she needs to state the name of her church and her pastor before she is allowed to speak?
But as a parent, it is a church she go to now. Sister Brown, you heard the moderator.
I'm sorry.
I'm joking, Sister Brown. I'm joking, sweetheart. Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Oh my gosh.
You can go, since I have staff to provide this for me, but you can pull up, what is it, Florida? Is it florida.gov? And it'll show all of these amendments. And as you start researching, and you could Google it, who's sponsoring these amendments, and it should tell you exactly who, whether it's a person, because some of them are single person people that just have millions of dollars, and then some are corporations. And when we look at corporations, if you look at it, like Trump likes to give, and COVID-19 is a perfect example. Corporations, this money, big money, and he keep feeding the rich. And then the people who really needed the money got nothing or little because they keep putting it into corporations, and these corporations then turn around and use that same funding to make our lives miserable. I give an example, Home Depot, who said, when Trump kept saying, well, he want to build a wall, and they said that they'll furnish it free. We'll be surprised how we spend our money, but not knowing. And they always say, follow the money. When you start following the money, just pull up different corporations, name, and you'll be surprised. Oh my God, look at what is going on here. The sugar in the state of Florida, the sugar people, the sugar, powerful. Florida Power and Light, powerful. Money is there, is what they're doing with the money.
Any other questions?
That is so true. President Parrott was on the phone when we were chatting with Ms. Keith, and I asked her the question. I said, Pam, how realistic is it to think that a check can come to a certain demographic, certain class, financial class of people, $1,000. You know, how rich is America? She said, Pastor Philpott, you wouldn't even be able to imagine. And so you are right, Dr. Thomas, billions and billions of dollars are something that we can't fathom because most of us are not billionaires. We don't even know a billionaire, you know, that we can reach or call. So I definitely agree with you. And then I asked her, what is the philosophy? Why is it that we butt heads, Democrats, Republican, and the philosophy is what we want to do with the money. Rich people have a real philosophical issue with paying taxes, supporting this country to give to poor people or Black people. They have a major issue with that because you're trying to see the good in all people, you know?
Right, right.
And when she shared that with me, that does make sense.
Pastor, it's so funny, moderator, that you said that because it's that mindset that is destroying this country. And that's one of the things that we fight for is we didn't ask for the whole pie, but can we get at least a piece? Because this country was built on the backs of Black people. And yet we're the ones that get the least. And if you notice, even during COVID, when they gave out the little $1,200 and some still haven't gotten their $1,200, and then they gave it and then they opened it up where we can go and spend it all in a day because of the need, when it could have been even more money and it could have been more efforts to help people, and they did not. But yet they gave the majority of the money these big corporations, and they use that to help bring hardship on poor folks or middle class people lives, and it's just unfortunate.
Sister Moore, Barbara Moore, did you have a question?
I have a quick question.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to indicate that the League of Women Voters, the state site, has a very thorough, detailed explanation of each of the amendments and the background and who actually introduced those amendments. It's on their state site.
Say that one more time.
The State League of Women Voters, on their website, they have a detailed explanation with the background of each amendment and who actually introduced them. Someone was asking about that earlier.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Maddie?
Yes, one quick question. You were speaking about the voters, dead voters that they had. This is my son. They sent this to him. He died September 20th, 2000. I have a pack of mail for him that has been constantly coming in. I have texts on my phone where they have been texting, Xavier, this is so-and-so, vote. How do I find out, or how do I stop this from happening?
The supervisor of election office should, number one, stop it as far as any voting material. They don't know that your son is deceased. And then you got these other crooks that would use even your son's information to cast a vote. That's the way. Yeah. And I'm sorry.
Is there a way that I can find out if someone voted using his information?
The supervisor of election office should be able to tell you. Because you could even find out if you voted, you could even find out, did they receive, say if you mailed in your vote, or you could even find out about yourself. So you also say that, share with them the information that you're still getting, because they don't know that your son is deceased.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Sister Thomas, and it's important for all of us to understand that it is sad to say that, it's like your Social Security. If someone was receiving Social Security, it's important for us to go down there and let them know that person is deceased, so they can stop sending those checks it's the same almost policy and procedure with voters. You have to go down and let them know that this person is deceased, because watch this, and I'm not calling any names, but there are people that work in certain areas, and if they work in these areas and that name is still slipping through the crack, they sell that information.
That's right.
They sell that information. I've been working in the funeral home industry since I was 14 years old, and I've had many folk come to me and say about getting persons that are deceased, getting their information, and because they want they can use their information still to get things done. So we have to make sure we have to cover some bases. And I'm just saying what I'm saying.
That's so true.
All right. Well, Sister Thomas, I am delightfully proud of the fact, and thank you so very much for coming in tonight and sharing with us. You are truly busy this time of the season. On Saturday in Florida, we will have so many events, and of course on Sunday, Faith in Florida sponsors so many Souls to the Polls activities, and actually today they sponsored a seniors poll, Souls to the Poll, fed all the seniors that came out and voted today. They're doing a lot of good things. You can look up this organization simply by going to faithinflorida.org and find out what they're doing, not just in election times, but for our community in other areas. They're on the battlefield for us, and we are proud of the fact that we have a Black person, Black woman leading in an executive way for us in this area. So hats off to you, Sister Rhonda Thomas. Let's, if we will, just thank God for her tonight. Job well done. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you too, Pastor.
I yield to our moderator for any closing remarks. I know that we have another service to slip ourselves into.
President, I am going to yield to our women's president for the closing remarks, President Gloria Jackson Davis. Thank you so much, Sister Thomas. Now I will say this, you know, Florida East Coast goes beyond Miami. We go all the way to Cocoa. I just want to tell you that, all right?
I got you, Pastor.
Thank you, my sister and my friends. We go way back. Thank you so much. We came from the same church. Amen. For many, many years. And so thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Thank you. The information was right on target. Enlightening, learned some things tonight. Thank you so very much. And those who, I'm one who have not voted, and I'm very, very much interested in the amendments that you were talking about tonight, just to get a more clear understanding of what it's all about, and to know that there are behind the scenes, there's motives behind. I mean, I didn't know. And so I'm still trying to get the clarity of a lot of things. And so thank you so much for being with us tonight. And we do appreciate your presence. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for what our ears have heard, our heart has felt. And so, Lord, we pray for enlightenment, insight into what lies ahead of us. Father, we pray that you would give us divine favor. We need divine inspiration. And so we ask you to step in, divine favor, do it for your people. Let justice reign, oh God, round down like a mighty stream. Lord, we need you. We ask you to bless us and keep us. In your name we pray. Amen. 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 God bless you. Thank you.
God bless you all.
We'll see you over at 7 o'clock for the sermon. Thank you.